Protecting these four muscles could literally be the difference between being completely independent and living your best life at the age of 80, or being stuck at home at the age of 65, needing help to get out of a chair. And look, I know that sounds completely dramatic to some people, but there really is a version of getting older that a lot of people just assume is inevitable. You know, you start walking more slowly, you start using the handrail to stop you falling down the stairs, you hesitate before stepping off the curb to walk across the road. You start needing to push yourself up out of the chair because your legs just aren't strong enough anymore. People call this getting old. And yes, when you get older, you know, certain things happen. But in my opinion, all of this stuff that I just mentioned happens far too early these days. And the reason I care about this so much is that I watch it happen in front of me with the patients that I see in the emergency department all the time. Patients in their 60s or 70s arriving on 8 or 10 or 12 different medications, looking really frail and weak, with bodies that have just lost the reserves to deal with any kind of stress and then bounce back from it. And running through so many of these cases is muscle loss that started very quietly in middle age, that picked up speed in their 60s and was sort of never really addressed. But I also genuinely, every day that I'm at work, see elderly people who have been active throughout their entire lives, who are able to walk so quickly that I can barely keep up with them. So what we're going to talk about today are 4 specific things that you need to protect to change that trajectory. And those include your quads, your calves, your postural muscles or your core, and also your brain. And then at the end, I'll give you a very simple framework for actually putting all of this together, because that's the part that most people never really seem to think about. If you're new here, then hello, I'm Dr. Alex. I'm an emergency medicine doctor working in the NHS in the UK, helping you to live longer by preventing the diseases that I spent the last 10 years treating. So from around the age of 30, we all start losing muscle, roughly 1 to 2% a year, if we're not doing something to actually challenge it. And look, that sounds like nothing. 1 or 2% a year doesn't sound like much at all. But if you run those numbers forward 20 or so years, then you've lost almost a third of your muscle mass. And then run them forward 30 years, and you're genuinely in serious territory. This is a huge amount of your muscle. The clinical term for this is sarcopenia, and I've mentioned this a few times in other videos. This is age-related muscle loss. And a landmark paper in the Journal of Cachexia, Sarcopenia and Muscle estimated that this affects around 30% of older adults living within the community. And the real world consequences of that are not abstract at all. They are falls, they are fractures, they are hospitalizations, they are loss of independence, and they are also premature death. A fractured hip after the age of 70 carries a 1-year mortality of 30%. And the truth is that not many people making these sort of decisions about whether to exercise in their 40s have that number in mind, obviously because they've probably never been told it, which I think is an enormous problem this day and age. In a study following over 5,000 adults over the age of 65 for nearly a decade, those with the weakest muscle strength had more than double the risk of dying compared to the strongest group, double. And another major analysis in aging research reviews found that higher muscle mass in midlife was really strongly associated with a lower risk of early death, heart disease, and disability in later life. So this isn't fixed, it's not inevitable. And the time to start doing something about this is well before you start to see the consequences. So the first muscle, and the one that I'd argue probably matters most in terms of day-to-day independence, is the quadriceps, the big muscle group at the front of your thigh. This is the muscle that decides whether or not you can get out of a chair easily, or whether you're rocking forwards and pushing off the armrest. And it's also your stair muscle as well, which is why stairs that used to feel effortless start to feel like hard work when this muscle fades. And here's a really quick test for you. So just go and sit down in a normal chair, cross your arms over your chest so you can't use them, and try to stand up 5 times without using your arms. If that feels really difficult, or if you're reaching for the armrest without even thinking about it, then this muscle needs your attention. The good news is that the exercise to fix this is the exercise that you've just done. It is a sit to stand, which is just a squat with a chair behind you. Or if you are strong enough, then you can squat, and this will absolutely build your quads up. To do this with the chair, then just stand in front of it with your feet around shoulder width apart and your toes turned slightly outwards. And then just lower yourself back down towards the seat and then come back up nice and controlled. If you need to actually sit down on the chair and then stand back up, then that is a completely legitimate exercise and a great place to begin. From there, sort of naturally progress it into hovering just above the seat and eventually into a full squat without the chair. What's brilliant about this exercise is just how many muscles it recruits all at once. Your quads, your glutes, your hamstrings, your calves, your core, all bracing to stabilize you, which is why it's so effective for zero equipment. You do not need a barbell or a dumbbell or a bench or anything like that. Now, what I'll do is I'll put a description in the link below to show you exactly what sort of good technique looks like, because getting the form right does matter for protecting your knees and your lower back as well. But the basic principle is just a slow, controlled movement, 10 reps, 2 or 3 times throughout the day, or more if you can manage it. Now, if you're starting from zero, then you will be a bit sore in the next couple of days after starting, and that is absolutely fine. Just take it nice and easy. But in terms of what to actually expect beyond that, the first week or two, the changes are almost entirely happening in your nervous system. Your brain getting better at coordinating the muscles that you already have, better timing, smoother movements. And the actual physical muscle growth starts from around weeks 3 to 6 if you keep this up consistently, and it compounds significantly after that. The timeline, as with a lot of things, is a bit slower as you get older, but the direction is always positive if you keep doing it. The second muscle group that most people have never really thought about training is their calves. And yet this is one of the most important anti-fall muscle groups that we have in our bodies. Now, your calves stabilize you when you're slightly off balance. They control your forward movement when you walk, and they give you that sort of confident stride that keeps up your walking speed. Now, walking speed is one of the strongest independent predictors of overall health and survival in older people, which sounds a bit abstract until you actually think about it. That cautious sort of slow shuffle that you see in older people isn't just about age. A big part of it is muscle loss in the lower leg. And here's another quick test for you again. What I want you to do is go and stand near the kitchen counter or a desk or the wall for balance, and then try 10 really controlled single leg calf raises, just lifting one heel off the floor, rising you up onto your toes and then lowering you back down slowly. If that feels shaky or barely possible, then this muscle needs some work. You can start with both legs if you need to, just holding the kitchen counter and then rising up slowly onto your toes and then lowering again slowly. 10 to 15 reps once or twice a day. Starting small and consistent and then gradually building up is the approach here. And it's worth knowing that the calf is also directly responsible for pumping blood back up from your legs to the heart. So there is a cardiovascular argument for training this as well, not just a balance argument. Now, the third group of muscles is the one that keeps you upright. This is your core and your postural muscles, the deeper muscles running alongside your spine and then around your torso. When these start to weaken, the posture sort of rounds forward. People start looking down when they walk. They look quite stooped and hunched. Their center of gravity shifts, and this is where something really important happens. So your nervous system, specifically the cerebellum, the part of the brain at the base of your skull, right at the back, this handles coordination and balance, and it's constantly receiving signals from your legs and feet, telling it where you are in space, and importantly, whether you're about to fall over. Now, when these postural muscles weaken and people stop moving regularly, those signals naturally degrade. The neural pathways get sort of pruned back because the brain operates this sort of very brutally simple principle, which is use it or lose it. And what that means practically is that the system that's supposed to catch you when you trip, the one that generates a fast enough response to correct your body before you hit the ground, simply becomes too slow to do its job. That's why falls in older adults aren't just bad luck. They're the end result very often of years of accumulated muscle and neurological decline that nobody addressed. A simple test here is just to stand on one leg and see how long you can hold it without excessive wobbling. And this is harder than it sounds. If 10 seconds is quite difficult, then your balance system needs some attention. The exercises that work here are things like bird dogs or side planks and glute bridges, and I'll put videos in the description below to show you how these look and how to do these movements properly. But to give you a really rough idea, a bird dog is where you're on all fours on the floor and you extend one arm and the opposite leg out at the same time. You hold it for a couple of seconds and then bring them back in, which sounds really easy until you try it. A side plank is basically just lying on your side and then lifting your hips off the floor. And a glute bridge is lying on your back with your knees bent and then pushing your hips upwards towards the ceiling. And again, just watch those videos in the description if you want to see how these are done properly. None of these require any equipment at all. All of them can be done on the floor in your living room or bedroom or wherever. And even just standing on one leg while the kettle boils starts to rebuild exactly the kind of neuromuscular calibration that is the difference between catching a stumble and ending up on the floor. Now, the fourth one technically isn't a muscle, but it behaves exactly like one. If you use it, it stays strong. If you neglect it, it quietly deteriorates. And this is all about the brain. And I've just touched on the connection between movement and the brain in that last section, but it goes much further than just coordination and balance. Physical movement triggers the release of something called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is essentially like fertilizer for your brain cells. It helps existing neurons to survive and then new neurons to grow as well. Higher BDNF is consistently linked to better memory, sharper thinking, and a lower risk of dementia as well. And the Framingham Heart Study, something that I mention all the time, one of the longest running health studies ever conducted, found that people who moved more had significantly lower rates of dementia over the long term. A 2022 paper in the British Journal of Sports Medicine found that even modest increases in physical activity were associated with really big reductions in dementia risk across huge populations. And something that I've mentioned a few times before, about a year ago, we got a golden lab called Mango. And as he got bigger, we started walking him more and more. So now we walk him around 30 or 40 minutes 3 times a day. And the changes that I've noticed in myself are really hard to ignore. With that walking, my fitness improved, my legs got considerably stronger, but the thing I noticed most was my mood. It was significantly better in a way that was really hard to attribute to anything else. The only thing that had changed around that time was walking the dog. So when I tell you about the links between movement and muscle and brain health, I'm also telling you it matches what I felt firsthand. Building these muscles isn't just about your legs and your independence, it's probably one of the most powerful things you can do for your brain. As we get to the end of this video, let me just give you a framework for actually putting this into practice. And the first thing I want to say here is that if you're already living a very active life, like genuinely active, where you're gardening and shopping and carrying your bags, you're out and about regularly, climbing stairs, constantly bending and then getting back up again, then you're probably already doing more for these 4 muscles than you realize. This constant low-level compounding muscle use that comes from just living actively is genuinely more powerful than being mostly sedentary and then doing a few of these dedicated exercises a few times a week. The bottom line about all of this is that your body doesn't need a gym, it just needs to be used all the time, every day. But for people who have spent the last few years mostly sitting, which honestly describes a huge proportion of the population, targeted exercises like the ones in this video are enormously valuable, and the gains for somebody going from sedentary to consistently doing these will compound in a way that is really hard to overstate. It's probably more powerful than a lot of medications we could prescribe you. So practically then, what I want you to do is to start with 1 movement today. Sit to stand from a chair. Do 10 reps without your arms. If that's where you are, then great. That is the right starting point. For a lot of you, that will be far too simple, but just start where you are. And if you have to use your arms, then that's fine. And then once that feels quite easy, what I want you to do is increase the reps, but then also add a second exercise in. So this will be calf raises either at the back of the chair or the kitchen counter, or while you're waiting for the kettle to boil or the microwave or whatever, just sort of dotted throughout the day. Do as many reps as you can, try and do them regularly, and then once that feels easy, you can then add standing on one leg for your balance exercises. And then every couple of weeks, try and push something a little further. So that could be more reps or going a bit lower, or some more exercises that you might find on YouTube. And then once you've got all of those nailed down, you can add regular walking into your day as well. So walking does something really powerful that those targeted exercises don't quite manage. It trains all of these muscles together in a really functional way. It keeps that brain to muscle connection really sharp. And the research on what it does for your overall health is remarkable. There was this really, really big meta-analysis in the European Journal of Preventative Cardiology, which pulled data from over 400,000 people, and it found that walking was associated with a significant reduction in cardiovascular death. And another study called the Nurses' Health Study found that brisk walking for 3 hours a week was associated with a 35% lower risk of a heart attack. And I'll put the link for this study in the description below if you want to take a read of it. Around 7,500 steps a day is all you need, really. You don't need 20,000 steps or to be climbing mountains every single day. You just need to be consistent. And if you can do at least some of your walking after a meal, then that is even better. Because what the science tells us is that 3 short walks after meals reduces your 24-hour blood glucose levels more effectively than a single longer walk at another time in the day. And alongside all of that, it's actually really important to remember to feed your muscles with enough protein. Older people need more protein than most people assume, somewhere around 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilo of body weight per day. Now, the framework for all of this is simple, even though it won't be easy for everybody. It comes down to a few core principles: moving more just in your daily life, adding targeted exercises consistently, walking regularly, and then eating enough protein to actually support your muscles doing the work. If you do that, then you're not just maintaining muscle, you are protecting your independence, you are protecting your balance, your metabolic health, and also your brain as well. Because it all runs on the same system. And the research is crystal clear about what happens to people who keep that system active versus those who let it quietly decline over years.